In a quiet, heavy courtroom, the tension was palpable. A woman of color, dressed sharply in a tailored black suit, walked in with undeniable assurance, her presence commanding respect. Yet, a police officer, blinded by bias, blocked her path, dismissing her credentials. He sneered at her FBI badge, accusing her of fraud, and, to the shock of everyone present, attempted to cuff her. Little did he know that in a matter of minutes, everything he knew would unravel, crushed beneath the weight of the truth she held. This is the story of Zarya Washington, a determined federal agent who turned humiliation into a powerful redemption, shaking the very foundations of justice. Hold on tight, because what's coming next will be nothing short of astonishing. It was a crisp Thursday morning when Zarya stepped into courtroom 12A, her steps firm and resolute. The stone walls of the courthouse seemed to whisper with the ghosts of injustice, a heavy silence hanging in the air. She held a briefcase, a brown leather case that carried much more than just papers. Inside, a USB drive held recordings, testimony, and video evidence, all of which had the potential to expose deep-rooted corruption within the police department. She wasn't just there as a witness. She was the spark that would ignite a fire of truth. Zarya had been raised in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, where the lessons of resilience were passed down not from textbooks, but through the quiet strength of those around her. Her mother, a nurse, worked tirelessly to make ends meet, and her father had long been absent from her life. From an early age, Zarya learned to hold her head high, especially when faced with judgment and suspicion. By 16, she had already memorized the unspoken rules of survival. Always be aware, never let your guard down, and keep your identity visible. This resilience carried her far, into the FBI, where her perseverance outshone the doubts of those who had underestimated her. But as she approached the security checkpoint that morning, she was stopped by Officer Thomas Hargrove, a middle-aged man who had been on the force for over 2 decades. He looked at her with a sneer, dismissing her FBI badge as a forgery. "This is fake," he growled, shoving her to the side. Without checking her credentials or giving her a chance to explain, he grabbed her wrist and twisted her arm behind her, attempting to cuff her in front of a stunned audience. The sound of the handcuffs clicking echoed across the courtroom, silencing everyone. Zarya, her cheek pressed against the cold wood of the railing, felt a fierce surge of anger. This wasn't just about a badge. It was about a system that had repeatedly undermined her. The officer, unaware, had just put her in a position to destroy him. The briefcase on the floor contained the very evidence that could bring him and others like him down: recordings of Hargrove coercing witnesses, falsifying reports, and targeting minority groups. "Where did you get this?" he mocked, holding up her FBI ID like a joke. "Did you steal it?" A few officers chuckled, but the crowd didn't laugh. It was as if a storm was about to break. Zarya, now on her knees, whispered quietly but with a chilling certainty, "You've made the biggest mistake of your life." The officer tightened the cuffs, thinking he had silenced her, but he was gravely mistaken. In a small detention room, Zarya sat, the red marks from the cuffs still visible on her wrists. A young officer offered her water and murmured an apology, but she didn't need sympathy. She needed clarity. What had just happened wasn't an accident. It was a glaring reminder of how little had changed in the system, even with a badge and undeniable proof in her hands. Outside, the news had already spread. Reporters captured snippets of the incident. Videos and photos flooded social media, exposing the injustice. The judge paused the session, but the reason for the disruption was clear. The woman who was supposed to testify had been humiliated by the very officer she was about to bring to justice. But Zarya wasn't backing down. Her testimony was still on the docket, and as she took the stand, a new kind of power radiated from her. The room fell silent as she spoke. "For the past 7 months, I have led an undercover investigation into widespread corruption within the Atlanta Police Department," she began, pulling out the USB drive and pointing at the projector. The evidence she revealed was damning. Recordings of officers fabricating reports, falsifying body camera footage, and engaging in blatant racial profiling. The room was frozen as Zarya played a clip of Hargrove instructing another officer to fabricate charges against an innocent man. A woman in the audience, the young man's mother, quietly wept. Zarya's voice rang out again, unyielding. I have 12 more recordings, all documenting the illegal detentions of young black men, all dismissed without cause. The evidence is clear. Hargrove, his face pale and sweating, whispered frantically to his attorney, but his arrogance was rapidly evaporating with each word Zarya spoke. When the prosecutor asked her to identify the officer who had wrongfully detained her, Zarya replied without hesitation, Officer Thomas Hargrove. The judge confirmed, the same officer involved in this morning's incident. Zarya didn't miss a beat. Yes, Your Honor, and that is why I request the rest of my testimony to be protected under federal privilege. I believe my safety is at risk. The judge agreed, and the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. Hargrove was no longer untouchable. His badge, once a symbol of authority, was now just a tool of corruption. The following day, Zarya returned to the courtroom with the same suit, the same briefcase, but with an energy that felt like a storm gathering strength. The press was in full force, and Hargrove, now visibly shaken, entered with his usual bravado, though it was clear his confidence had vanished. Zarya was prepared. The judge announced a federal motion to declassify new files, and Zarya stood tall. I filed an emergency motion this morning, she began, including a request for immediate disciplinary action against Officer Thomas Hargrove. She pulled out another USB drive, one marked with red tape, and shared 26 minutes of audio from a confidential informant under Hargrove's command. The tapes revealed disturbing details of Hargrove manipulating reports and coercing officers into silence. Hargrove, red-faced and defensive, shouted, "This is a setup. It's all lies." Zarya remained unfazed. "Would you like to explain what you meant when you said, 'I'm untouchable'?" she asked calmly. "That's your voice on the tape, isn't it, officer?" With the judge's permission, she played a video of Hargrove in a dark alley, handing over falsified documents. The damning footage left no room for doubt. "We request the immediate arrest of Officer Thomas Hargrove for obstruction of justice and conspiracy," Zarya stated. The judge, his face grim, ordered, "Sheriff, arrest Officer Hargrove." As Hargrove's wrists were cuffed, he stammered, "You believe her over me?" But no one came to his defense. The sound of the cuffs snapping shut was the final nail in his coffin. Zarya stepped close enough for him to hear. "We didn't think I'd have the last word, did you?" The case didn't end with Hargrove's arrest. Zarya, alongside her lawyer Natalie and a remorseful officer, Daniel Cruz, uncovered a larger web of corruption that reached far beyond Atlanta. They reopened a 5-year-old case involving a young officer who had died under suspicious circumstances. His death ruled a suicide, though the inconsistencies pointed to foul play. This investigation led to the exposure of systemic abuse nationwide. With Ruiz's testimony, legal reforms were pushed forward, offering whistleblower protections and sparking a wave of change. Hargrove's conviction was a symbol to all that no one was above the law. Zarya, promoted within the FBI, spearheaded new policies and mentored the next generation of agents. But she never forgot the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, and the constant threats that followed her every step. One afternoon, back at her mother's home in Atlanta, Zarya sat quietly, touching an old photograph of her father. Her mother, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "He'd be so proud of you." Zarya didn't answer, but for the first time in a long while, she exhaled, feeling the weight of her journey lessen, just for a moment. This isn't just Zarya's story. It's a call to action. What would you do if the system tried to silence you? Would you speak out, even when it's uncomfortable? Would you listen to those brave enough to break their silence? Justice isn't about recognition or praise. It's about scars, sleepless nights, and the quiet courage to do what's right again and again. Zarya showed us that a single voice can spark a revolution. Now it's your turn.